Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of Alignful.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. So this week I'm getting right into it, and here's the thing. I had a topic that I was going to cover, and the ironic thing is the topic I was going to cover is exactly what I'm going to put into practice by not covering the topic, which ironically will also probably tend to cover the topic. Are you intrigued yet? Without further ado, let's listen to this week's episode. Happy Woo Woo Wednesday. So this week I had a topic planned that I feel really strongly about, and I mapped it out yesterday. And then this morning I woke up to record it and it just didn't feel right. So I went ahead and paused because yes, I did have a plan to record this episode. However, I wanted to check in because something was off, something was going wrong. So I actually checked in with my inner voice, as I do. And what came through was, it's not ready yet. And as I kind of read through what I was writing, what I was clear on now is that topic is not fully developed. And I need to contemplate a little bit more and map it out in a way that I can really share it with you all so it makes sense to you and resonates. So the topic is, I'll tease you because this will come out at some point. It's why pushing through will ultimately pull you back. And the interesting thing is, today I sat down to record that topic, and what do you know? It doesn't feel right. So, interestingly enough, the typical current societal expectation, that mentality would tell me, you, Dana, said you were going to do this topic, you wrote it out, you had a plan to record it, so you just have to do it. That's what you are going to do, so you have to do it. And you have to get an episode out, and you said this is what it was going to be, so you just have to push through. It may not feel good right now, but you know you'll feel better if you record the episode. I disagree. In my past versions of myself, I definitely would have pushed through and just recorded it. But I have this knowing now, and it's happened through practice and me continuing to show up, to check in with my inner voice, to follow my alignment, right? I now have a knowing that when I push through on something like this that I know is not in alignment, the product that I create is not going to be the highest offering. And I'm not in the business of giving you guys just stuff. I am in alignment with offering you content from my highest self. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I'm not going to push through just for the heck of it. So what does this look like? I obviously had to put out a podcast because I do put one out every Wednesday, and that matters to me to be consistent. But how and when I show up to create that, that's when I have the flexibility, because that's how I can dictate when I am in my best alignment to then serve and offer to you. So it was interesting this week because I wasn't feeling it. Then I had a topic that I wanted to talk about. I got excited. I kind of wrote it out, but hit a bit of a wall. And then it's kind of last minute now, down to the wire. Thank you, PJ, who does my editing. It's down to the wire and I have to record something. But what I realized is I can record something that feels in alignment with where I am now, which here, as you are experiencing, is me just sharing my own experience, how I am dealing with something like this. And yes, I have more flexibility in terms of time frame, and I'm creating my own deadlines, right? But we can bring this into everyday life. We can start to play with alignment before action. We can start to play with the idea of, what does it really mean if I'm not feeling it? And this is a bigger topic that we will cover in another episode, and I'm actually going in depth into it in April's content for the Align in 5 members. And if you haven't joined the membership, it's actually opening again on March 23rd, which means you will have access to this content that is coming out in April. So I highly recommend, if that would be the time that you jump in, if this is interesting to you, because the topic is, how do I know if this is my inner voice, right? That inner knowing that's talking, or if this is my ego just throwing a hissy fit and not wanting to do the work. How do I know? I think we're all afraid that if we give ourselves a break, that we're then giving in to this version of ourselves that we don't believe in, this ego version that doesn't want to work, is going to throw a fit, and is lazy, and basically all the things we don't want to be. So we fear that if I don't push through, if I don't get something done, if I don't force myself to do something even when it feels bad, then I'll never get it done. But I would argue that the reason you think that is because you've never truly given yourself the opportunity to see it through to the other side, because you're so afraid. We're so stuck in the ego mind, being, dictated and driven by this ego mind, which is one of fear, worry, doubt, mistrust, that we never actually give ourselves the opportunity to see this through. So if every time you don't feel like doing something, you push through, for example, going to the gym, if every time you don't feel like going to the gym, you still go, of course you're going to feel good when you go to the gym for the most part, right? You're working out, that's great. But you're dismissing and not giving yourself credit for something deeper within, which is something within your body is actually saying, hey, this isn't what I need right now. And inherently, if your body knows this isn't what you need right now, it also will show up for you when it's time and when it's more aligned for you. The phrase I like to follow is alignment before action. So that takes the habit and routine out of the equation. Like, I just do this because I do it. And it turns it into, I do this when it feels most aligned so I can perform at my highest level and offer at my highest good. So with the exercise example, of course you're worried because society has dictated and implanted all these ideas in our heads that if we don't exercise, we will get fat and become overweight and look horrible, and then we'll be rejected, right? There's some story there, and we'll be unhealthy. But does that mean you always have to work out the way you always do? Do you always have to go to the gym 5 days a week? What are you making it mean about yourself if you skip a day, if you skip a week, if you skip a month? I actually have a whole blog post about this. I didn't work out for 4 months or more. And I had determined that I would not work out again until I feel naturally inspired to do so. And that was a big challenge for my ego mind, because I was a yoga instructor. I practiced all the time. I was very skilled in my movement, very fit. And I stepped away from all of it. And guess what? I was fine. And the natural desire to move again came back. See, we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust that if we skip a day or a week that we'll ever go to the gym again. We're so afraid of what might happen that we're unwilling to give ourselves the grace and the compassion to take a break, to pause, to actually ask, this is interesting. I suddenly don't want to move and work out. What's going on? Inner voice, what can I glean from this situation? What do you need me to know? Is there something my body needs to process and it needs quiet space and rest to do so? That's a different conversation. That's a different way of looking at and experiencing something like not wanting to work out. The same can go for the way you eat. And as I think I shared, I recently cut out caffeine. And I've done that over the years. I cut it out a couple times a year, then I bring it back, and it's kind of fluid. But usually in the past, I have cut it out because my mind has determined it's bad and that I shouldn't be having caffeine. So this time, I was guided to release it from my routine, from my inner voice and my body. So instead of thinking and deciding that caffeine was bad for me and cutting it out, I was told by my body, which happened in that when I was drinking only 1 cup, I was getting really dizzy and lightheaded. I was having a lot of conversations and interacting with people that naturally made me feel high and happy. And so I didn't feel the need to have more caffeine. It was tipping me over the edge. I was also feeling a little anxious and just it wasn't feeling good. And then I had 2 different appointments that required I didn't have caffeine in the morning, and it all aligned. And I said, okay, I get it. I don't need it right now, so I'm going to release it. On the flip side, this doesn't mean I am now mentally, from the ego mind, attached to me not drinking caffeine. I know that right now it does not serve me, and it was easy and effortless for me to cut it out. Where in the past it was very hard and challenging because I was cutting it out from a place of judgment and criticism and attachment with the mind. This time I was cutting it out, and I like to say releasing it, from a place of alignment, joy, and knowing from my inner voice. That also means that at some point it may also feel aligned for me to drink caffeine again. And if it does, I will. That's how you know you're being guided by your inner voice versus your ego mind. The ego mind loves to be attached to an identity and idea. For example, I don't eat meat. I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegan. And God forbid I ever touch something that's non-vegan. What if my body starts craving meat? Now I'm really denying my body that because I am vegan and I have morals and I have these things that my mind has put in place that may be very morally on the high ground and have very good intentions. But when you start allowing your mind to dictate decisions that go against your body's true needs and desires, you are no longer serving yourself at the highest level. Whether that is eating meat or not eating meat, it can go the same way. You may suddenly find that you're not desiring foods, different foods that you used to desire, or caffeine, or alcohol. It's when we get so stuck in the identity of who we are and we become unconscious in what we choose to do just because we do it. That's when we become disconnected from the body and are not willing to evolve and shift in a way that is being asked of us. And throughout your life, this opportunity presents itself over and over and over again. In fact, the first episode was all about being in a growth period and finding comfort in that discomfort. And here, what I'm saying is we have to be willing to notice the signs and then consider them. And when we notice the signs and we consider them, and if we truly want to follow what's the highest for our bodies, for our hearts in that moment, we can make decisions from that place, from the inner voice, versus out of habit, out of this is what we've always done, and out of this identity and attachment to who you think you are, which is all mind-based. And often that mind-based decision and attachment isn't even of conscious choosing by you, because it's dictated by the media, by society, by expectations from those who you were raised by and who you spend most of your time with. So it's not even yours in the first place. That's why I am so passionate about teaching this work, teaching you to tap into your inner voice, teaching you to start to pay attention and listen to the signs from your body, from your inner voice that are guiding you on a regular basis, because then you are in control. Then you know that you're actually acting from a place of what is right for you versus what is expected of you. Do you see the difference? But in order to know what is right for you, you have to have a knowing of who you are. You have to have a connection to yourself that is deeper, that is inquisitive, that is open, and that is constantly evolving. You have to be able to tap into your inner voice in this moment, in that moment, in that moment, so you can be guided. And life becomes less effortful. Life becomes a little smoother because you're not in this constant state of resistance and of trying to push through and overcome the thing that you don't truly want to do at your core, but your mind thinks you need to because you said you would, because someone else has an expectation, because you should, because it's what you've been told is right. Only you, my friend, can know what is right for your body. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it is really helpful to read the books and to follow the gurus, right? And to try all the different ways of eating, for example, paleo and keto and gluten-free and vegan and vegetarian. Explore it and then always come back to your body, your knowing, your reactions. I love all the spiritual teachings. I love following and learning from all these brilliant minds. But ultimately, those are just touch points for me. Oh, I can explore this, but does it serve me? Oh, I've heard this is really a useful tool, and does it serve me? This way of eating, this cleanse, right? This workout plan, this morning routine, try it and then come back to you. Do not attach to something just because someone else tells you it's what you should do, including doing things for the sake of getting them done. Just because someone's told you that that is the way to do it, that's how you have integrity, that's what makes you right, it doesn't mean it's in alignment. So as you build this connection, this understanding, this knowing of self with your own inner voice, you will start to be able to tell. You'll have a barometer for when you're in alignment and when you're out. And when you find yourself out of alignment, you can just ask, will pushing through, will doing this despite my feelings serve me ultimately? Am I not wanting to do this because it's not going to serve me, or is this my ego mind? We start to ask these questions and you'll notice the answers using your inner voice type, which we also cover in the Align in 5 membership. And actually, I'm doing a challenge about this on March 18th if you want to discover your inner voice type. But your inner voice type will help guide you to answer these questions. And the more you have this alignment, here's the secret, okay? When you start doing things that are in alignment, when you prioritize your joy, your happiness, your alignment before pushing through, before taking action, you will find 2 things. One is that the work you create has a much higher vibration and value to those who receive it. It will be a higher caliber product, because I'm a firm believer that The energy that goes into the doing has a direct effect on the result of the doing. So if you're going into the doing like, ugh, I just got to get this done. I just have to make it through. I said I would. How can I? The end product's not going to be super high vibration. In fact, Abraham Hicks says, and this is a collective channeled entities, look them up if you're interested, but they say everything that we want to do is driven by a desire of how we think we're going to feel if we do or have that thing. But if the energy along the way moving toward the thing you want is not of joy and love and fun and appreciation, then you're never going to get to that point. Because how can you say, for example, once I have my house finished, then I can finally relax and enjoy my home. So the whole time you're trying to finish your house, if you're feeling stressed and angry and frustrated and worn out, you're then expecting all of a sudden you're magically going to feel relaxed? No way. You can't spend all of your time in one energy, then hope to get to a single point and have all of your energy be healed. It doesn't work that way. But imagine the whole time that you're trying to finish your house, that you're enjoying the process, right? Why would we go through a journey that's miserable and exhausting and painful by choice? This is one that we're choosing, just because at the end we hope it's going to be joyful. Instead, wouldn't we want to enjoy the much longer part, which is the journey, so that we are also at that point at the end, we also have that same energy of joy? It's an interesting thing to think about. It's like the old mindset of retirement. Work hard. It doesn't matter if you like what you're doing. Save and scrimp and, suffer in a way so that at one point in the future, this magical retirement place, you can finally start enjoying your life. I'm sorry, say what? No. Why wouldn't we want to enjoy our life while we're living it and also plan, right, and be mindful and intentional about how our future will look? We can't live our whole life not enjoying it so that in that one future point that hopefully we make it to, we can finally start having joy. No, we need to find that balance in between of there can be joy and alignment along the way and at the end point that you're looking to reach. And that's how I feel about this work is I can know that there's one thing that has to be done, which is a podcast needs to be recorded, but I don't want the process of recording it to be painful and effortful and feel like I'm just working to get it done and out of the way, because then you're going to receive that as the end result. Okay, that was one. I don't know if you remember, I started with 2 points. The second point is that the energy that it takes to do what you need to do, when you're in alignment, the energy is going to be a lot easier, more effortless, more flowing, and more enjoyable. So number one is that you want the end product to represent the energy that goes into it. And number two is when you prioritize that energy of alignment first, when you don't do something just because you have to in that moment, but you allow yourself the time to do it when it is inspired and feels enjoyable, then it's going to take less time, less effort, less energy, and it's going to be more enjoyable. So between the two, this has nothing to do with integrity and whether or not you get something done. It's all about shifting your perspective and the energy that you put into what you're doing so that it comes out as a better product and it's more enjoyable for you. And the more you get to enjoy what you're doing and creating along the way, the more that vibrates out to everyone else who you're engaging with. And it's a net benefit. In fact, you will end up creating more. You will create more with less effort than if you try to buckle down and force something out when it's not aligned. Why spend those 6, 7, 8 hours of a day trying to force something that feels horrible when possibly the next day when you're in alignment, that same amount of effort and time would produce nothing compared to the alignment where you might actually produce 10 times more in half the time. But you have to be willing to explore. You have to be willing to experiment. If you're not willing to, then you're just going to keep doing what you're doing because that's what you know. That's why we have this podcast, is kind of to introduce you to these different concepts. And my challenge, my offering to you is choose something that you have relatively low attachment to and try to follow your inner guidance, whether it's working out. Like if you really don't feel like it, what happens if you don't go until you feel inspired to work out? Or if it's a way of eating, or if it's doing a simple task throughout your workday. Maybe there's a small task that you always try to force out that might actually come in a place more effortlessly when you're aligned. What if you go on a walk first instead of trying to force something to happen? And just explore and witness. That is what this is about. You're building a relationship with yourself. You're building trust. And you're learning that ultimately the right answer is only what aligns for you. And the timing is important as well. And if you have a deadline like I did today with the podcast, we all have those. Like things have to happen at certain times sometimes. They don't always, but when they do, how can you make the experience more aligned? What can you do to align yourself before entering into that task? Whether it's going for a walk, playing with your cat, sitting out in the sun, reading a book, doing a meditation, cooking, something that brings you joy first, and then you can bring that energy into your task. And if you can, modify the task. I felt out of alignment with talking about the topic the way I had outlined it from my mind yesterday. And yet today, when I gave myself permission to just not cover that topic, we've kind of ended up talking about it anyway, haven't we? In a way more flowy, organic way. So I hope this gives you something to think about and consider. I know we covered a lot on this episode, but I would love to hear from you if you're willing to try this and what area that you try it. You can let me know on Instagram at Dana_Evans. You can reply to the podcast email. I love to hear from you. And you can even leave a comment and your rating when you review the podcast on iTunes that just shares what you used out of this episode. I hope you have a beautiful Wednesday, a beautiful day whenever you're listening to this. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans or find me on my website at alignful.com.